Ifrit, Lord of Flame, is the most recurring fire summon across the Final Fantasy series. Regarded as quick to anger and wrathful once provoked, he is frequently hostile when first met, but becomes a powerful ally when defeated. The roots of Ifrit's name are found in Middle Eastern religion and mythology. In the Quran, Ifrit is mentioned once, where it is followed by the phrase, "of the jinn." Most take this to refer to a single creature among the jinn, which are a type of spirit better known to Western cultures by the romanization, genie. In later stories, Ifrit is used more generally as another type of demon or spirit, possibly a subtype of jinn. While jinn have free will the same as humans and can be good or evil on an individual basis, Ifrit, either as an individual or a group, are usually depicted as wicked, cunning, and possessing great strength. The exact story behind the jinn varies between scholars and region. Generally, jinn are regarded as among the first beings to walk the earth before Adam, and were created by Allah from smokeless fire. They have a parallel in heavenly beings which were created from the poisonous fire of Samum, which is variably identified as the fires of the sun or the fires of hell. These beings are known as either the Al-Jinn or the Hin in different writings, and are each themselves sometimes considered another type of jinn. Notable among the jinn is Iblis, who has a role in Islamic scripture comparable to the Christian concept of Satan, in that he defied Allah and was cast into hell, where he became a leader of the jinn. For this reason, some generally regard the jinn as a whole as being associated with Iblis, fire, and the underworld. From such descriptions, it is not hard to see how the mythological Ifrit inspired the Final Fantasy Ifrit in numerous ways. Ifrit is depicted as a demi-humanoid figure. He has dark green-yellow skin, sometimes verging into brown or orange, and a long pair of curved horns. He wears a loincloth and sometimes has wrappings or metal bands around his wrists and ankles. In earlier titles, Ifrit had purple hair, but starting with Final Fantasy VIII, his hair is more commonly various shades of red and orange. His fingers may be clawed, and he may have hooves or talons instead of normal feet. The exact degree of how human or bestial Ifrit is varies from game to game. Final Fantasy X depicts him almost like a wolf, while in Final Fantasy XV he is identical to a human save for his horns. Ifrit's signature attack is variably known as Hellfire, Flames of Hell, or Inferno. The attack's animation has varied so much in Ifrit's various appearances that there is no recurring visual or thematic elements to speak of, beyond Ifrit somehow consuming the enemy in flame. The most common animation depicts Ifrit rushing past the enemy while wreathed in fire, but it has also been depicted as creating pillars of fire around the enemy, hurling a massive fireball at them, punching the ground to create a fiery explosion, and more. Ifrit's secondary recurring attack is Meteor Strike, which first appeared for it in Final Fantasy X. The attack name predates Ifrit's usage of it as an ability for monks where they lift an enemy into the air and slam them to the ground. Ifrit's Meteor Strike is more literal. Ifrit conjures a fiery meteor and flings it at enemies. Ifrit is also able to generally attack with various kinds of fire spells, and engages in melee combat using fire-infused punches and slashes. Ifrit is often one of the first summons the party can acquire, and on several occasions is one of the first bosses fought. He is often a rival or partner to Shiva, due to their opposing elemental affinities, and the two may be grouped with Rama for a trio representing fire, ice, and lightning. Ifrit's relationship with Shiva is touched upon in several games and made a part of the storyline, but other times their connection is merely thematic in their fire and ice juxtaposition. In Final Fantasy III, Ifrit is the level 4 summon. Its three abilities when summoned are Healing Light, which heals the party, Hellfire, which deals fire damage to one enemy, and Inferno, which deals fire damage to all enemies. The reason Hellfire and Inferno appear as different attacks in this game is because there have always been separate abilities in the original Japanese games, but some English games have translated Hellfire as Inferno, including this one. The source of the confusion likely stems from the fact both of these attacks could have their original Japanese names translated as Flames of Hell, so localizing them as Inferno and Hellfire is not a bad way to differentiate them in English. The translators just ought to have switched the two names. In Final Fantasy IV, Ifrit is one of several summons innately known by Rydia when she rejoins the party as an adult. Some versions of the game group Ifrit with Titan, Shiva, and Rama as a quartet of elemental summons. In versions of the game with the Lunar Ruins, the four are mini-bosses in Rydia's Lunar Trial, and Lunar Ifrit is the boss of Edge's Lunar Trial, where defeating him earns Edge the Hanzo's gloves, which upgrade Steel to Mug. Ifrit is also one of the 4 summons acquired by the Rydia imposter in the PSP exclusive Interlude chapter. In the game's sequel, The After Years, Edge and Ifrit cross paths again. The mysterious girl summons Ifrit against Edge and his students, the Eblon 4, in Edge's Tale. Unable to defeat the Eidolon, the group flees down the Tower of Babel to the underground, Ifrit pursuing them as a random encounter, until they leap off the tower onto the Falcon. In the final chapter, Ifrit has attacked Eblon, and the Spirit of Rubicante shows Edge how to use the Infernal band with Rydia, giving them the means to disperse Ifrit's flames with their own so they can reach him. The party defeats Ifrit and he comes to his senses and rejoins Rydia. A curious note on Ifrit is that the original North American Super NES release of the game localized Ifrit's name as Jin. Clearly someone on the translation team was familiar with the roots of the name and felt Jin was more appropriate. Final Fantasy V gives Ifrit a minor story role and backstory. He is kept in the Library of the Ancients and is tasked with burning various magical books that have been possessed by monsters. The party finds Ifrit sealed in a book and defeat him to earn his allegiance, and he later intimidates a possessed bookshelf into moving out of the party's way so they can go deeper into the library. In battle, Ifrit is a level 2 summon that uses Hellfire to attack all enemies. In Final Fantasy VI, the party sees Ifrit with Shiva in the Magitech research facility, the first time the two have been associated with each other. Kefka throws them in a garbage chute after draining them of their powers, and when the party drops down and approaches them, they attack. Eventually the two sense Rama's power and back down, turning themselves into Magicite and entrusting themselves to the party. Ifrit teaches the spells Fire, Fire, and Drain, and he boosts the user's strength on a level up. Strictly speaking, it is possible to permanently miss Ifrit's Magicite. Shiva's blocks the door out of the garbage chute and must be taken to proceed, but Ifrit could be left behind and cannot be obtained once the party leaves the dungeon. Final Fantasy VII gives the party the Ifrit summon materia after defeating Genova Birth in the cargo ship from Junon to Costa del Sol. In the game's prequel Crisis Core, Zack faces Ifrit at the end of Chapter 2 as he leaves Fort Tamblin, and when he assumes he's defeated it and turns his back on it, Ifrit rises up again, but Sephiroth arrives to strike Ifrit down. A recreation of Ifrit can be challenged in missions to earn its summon materia, the first summon Zack can acquire. Ifrit is also included in some of the original Final Fantasy VII demos that were made available in the late 90s, 2 of which follow the Reactor 1 mission that makes up the start of the game, but with a third party member and more high-level materia. Ifrit was also featured in a demo for Crisis Core at a gaming convention in 2006, where players fought Ifrit in Venora. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, Jessie gives Cloud Ifrit's materia at the end of Chapter 3, and it is the first summon players receive outside of DLC bonuses, as well as the only mandatory summon acquired. When playing in hard mode and facing Bahamut in the Shinra Battle Simulator, it will summon Ifrit to aid it when it falls below 50% HP. This makes it a rare instance in the franchise of a summoned monster being invoked by another summon. Final Fantasy VIII pits players against Ifrit as their first boss in the Fire Cavern. He reacts with horror to the presence of Shiva if the player summons her against him, and when defeated becomes the party's third guardian force. Ifrit is an offensive summon, with abilities to boost strength and the Mad Rush command, which puts the party under Berserk, Haste, and Protect. Its refinement abilities extract fire elemental magics from items, including Flare, and can convert items into ammo for Irvin's Limit Break, Shot. Ifrit has a minor role in Final Fantasy IX, as one of several Eidolons extracted from Garnet by Kuja, but he is never summoned in the story. On the third disc, when Garnet receives jewels from Dr. Tot containing her Eidolons to relearn them, Ifrit is contained in the Topaz. Ifrit has a mural on the Eidolon wall in the summoner village of Madain Sari, and if the player performs the correct actions here, they can view a hidden message on the wall at Ifrit's mural, where Garnet's real name is revealed in a message left by her parents. In Final Fantasy X, Ifrit is the Guardian Aeon of Kilika Temple, and the second Aeon unit acquires. Ifrit's Meteor Strike attack appears for the first time here as its special attack, a physical blow that ignores Protect, and its overdrive is Hellfire. Ifrit is associated with Wakka's celestial weapon, the World Champion, and upgrading the World Champion allows Ifrit to break the damage cap. Ifrit is faced as a boss numerous times, the first being the Mien High Road when Beljamide summons him in a duel of aeons with Yuna, who has no choice but to face Ifrit with valor for. Isaru's incarnation of Ifrit is named Grothia, and is summoned in the Via Purifico during a duel of aeons with Yuna. As with all of Yuna's aeons at the end of the game, the party must summon him and allow him to be possessed by Yevon, then destroy Ifrit. Finally, there is Dark Ifrit, fought at the ruins of home after the party acquires the airship. In 10.2, Ifrit is fought in Chapter 3 in Kilika Temple, under Shugen's control as with the other aeons, and it takes on the appearance of Dark Ifrit. The Ifrit of Final Fantasy XI looks quite different from most other incarnations. It is the avatar of fire, able to use Meteor Strike, Crimson Howl, and Inferno Howl, along with various other fire attacks and punch combos. Its Astral Flow ability, usable via Final Fantasy XI's Limit Break system 2-hour ability, is called Inferno in this game. According to legend, Ifrit was born from a ruthless warlord named Frit. He began to reform when he took in an orphaned girl he found in the ruins of a village his men had burned, naming her Falbub. Sometime later, survivors of Frit's rampages banded together and attacked his home, killing his servants and Falbub. Realizing the innocents he had harmed with his deeds, Frit went to a volcano where the spirits of the dead were said to gather, and let the souls of his victims consume him, turning him into a demon. He refused to let Falbub's spirit protect him from them, and offered the goddess Altana his life for hers. Seeing their bond and that they would not be happy if torn apart, Altana raised them both to the heavens. Ifrit's name in this story means Frit of the Flames, and Falbub is the brightest star in the constellation Ifrit. Ifrit's role in Final Fantasy XII as the Fire Summon is taken by Belias, but it lends its name to an airship as most summons do. It is the airship that ambushes the Resistance when they attack the Palace of Ravanasta the night of Vayne's arrival, and Balthier provides a pun alluding to its name. In Revenant Wings, Ifrit is the melee rank 3 Fire Summon, while Belias is the ranged rank 3 Fire Summon. Ifrit in this game is a large furry creature, almost like a fiery yeti, a design rather unlike any other seen before or since. His normal attack is Burning Strike, and his unique skill is Hellfire. Ifrit does not appear as a normal summon in Final Fantasy XIII. Its role as the fire elemental summon is filled by the new Eidolon, Brynhildr. Ifrit makes a cameo in Nautilus during a performance in which a Pulse Lassie summons Ifrit and does battle with a Cocoon Lassie commanding Rama. In Final Fantasy XIV, Ifrit is the primal of the Amaljar Beast tribe, to whom they make sacrifices to temper with its flames, turning them into fanatical minions of Ifrit. The adventurer is captured and taken before Ifrit, but Ifrit cannot turn their mind, as they have been blessed by the goddess Hydaelyn. The adventurer defeats Ifrit, earning them a measure of fame for overcoming a primal. At the end of the base game's campaign, Ifrit, along with the primals Titan and Garuda, has its power absorbed into the ancient war machine Ultima weapon, one of the final bosses of the campaign. In the expansion Shadowbringers, the adventurer travels to the First, the remains of a parallel world that was destroyed by a flood of light. As part of a plan to restore life to the world, new primals of the elements must be created, using the adventurer's memories of their encounters with them as a basis. To properly create the cycle of rainfall and evaporation, Ifrit and Garuda are summoned and fought together, the two swapping in and out of battle. However, unexpectedly, the two merge into a new primal of both elements, Raktapaska. Raktapaska is another name for Garuda in Sanskrit, and literally translates as red-winged, a fitting name for this summon's appearance and origins. In-universe, it is speculated the reason the two fused was that the encounter reminded the adventurer of their battle with the Ultima weapon that had absorbed their powers, and the memory influenced them to merge together. Although players cannot summon Ifrit itself, summoners can call a pet version, Ifrit Eggy, to aid them in battle. Its attacks are Crimson Cyclone, Burning Strike, Radiant Shield, Flaming Crush, and Inferno. Also of note is that Ifrit's highest tier difficulty battle is a notoriously difficult boss. Ifrit summons infernal nails that increase the damage of Hellfire to unsurvivable levels unless they are all destroyed in time. In the extreme difficulty battle, Ifrit not only summons 3 times as many nails, but they now explode to deal area damage when destroyed and inflict a debuff that increases the damage characters take. Players have to coordinate carefully to destroy the nails in a safe and timely manner. Ifrit in Final Fantasy XV takes cues from Christian and Greek mythos for its backstory, particularly the fall of Lucifer and the story of Prometheus. Ifrit is one of the 6 astrals that watches over the world of Eos. While most of them were indifferent to humans, Ifrit felt pity for them and gifted them his fire, allowing the great ancient civilization of Solheim to rise. Ifrit's compassion warmed the heart of Shiva, and they became lovers. When Ifrit believed Solheim had spurned the Astrals, he grew enraged and attacked them. As the Astrals are bound to protect humans from threats, even each other, the other 5 fought Ifrit and slew his physical form, and the grounds on which he fell became a volcano known as the Rock of Ravato. 2,000 years later, the Niflheim Empire found Ifrit's body in Ravato and brought him to a research facility preserved in ice. Vestael invited Arden to transform Ifrit into a demon and acquire his memories, as he knew Arden had done to humans. When Arden did this, he tapped into a vision of the crystal itself, and saw he had truly been its chosen king before Somnus usurped him. The knowledge helped motivate Arden to more willingly aid Niflheim in destroying Lucis. 12 years later, Arden attempted to raise Insomnia with Ifrit during the Founders' Day celebration, and Ifrit was dispersed when Bahamut intervened, trapping Arden in his swords. During the end of Final Fantasy XV, Arden summons Ifrit against Noctis and his companions when they reach the Citadel in Lucis. Bahamut again attacks, but Ifrit evades his Ultima sword and continues the fight with Noctis, only to be frozen solid and destroyed when Noctis summons Shiva. Ifrit is also faced as a boss in the multiplayer spin-off Comrades, summoned by Arden against the Glaives. Ifrit acts as a party member in Arden's DLC episode, able to use Firaga, Flames of Rage, and Meteor Strike. His final attack as a summon, Hellfire, is only used in the DLC's final boss battle, where it breaks the damage cap to deal maximum damage to Somnus. As a boss in Final Fantasy XV, Ifrit is fought in 2 phases that end in cinematic summon sequences. His appearance was changed in patch 1.21 to reflect his taint by the Star Scourge. His original model with his arm partially frozen is used in episode Arden when he's being held in Niflheim. Ifrit's sword in this incarnation appears in the Cydia NT as an alternate weapon for Arden. At this time, little is known about Final Fantasy XVI's story, but Ifrit seems to play an important role. In the world of Valisthea, people called Dominants are able to control the game's summoned monsters, called Icons. Joshua, little brother of the game's protagonist Clive Rothfield, is the Dominant of Phoenix, the Icon of Fire. However, the game's reveal trailer shows Ifrit being summoned to battle Phoenix, something that surprises an onlooker, that there are 2 Icons of Fire. The game's logo shows Phoenix and Ifrit facing off, and given that past logos have shown important iconography from the game, it can be assumed that Ifrit's presence and its rivalry with Phoenix is of critical importance to the story. As the iconic Summoner Flame, Ifrit appears in many other Final Fantasy titles. He has appeared in Tactics, Tactics Advance, Dimensions, Dimensions 2, Theatrhythm, Explorers, Brave Exvius, and many others. Ifrit's design varies in these spin-offs, but his Final Fantasy VIII incarnation is used as the basis for several such appearances. Final Fantasy Type 0 reuses assets from Crisis Core with modifications for its versions of Ifrit. Ifrit was the first Eidolon designed for the game, at a time when the developers were uncertain if making the Eidolons playable was feasible given the technological constraints. But their first attempt at doing so with Ifrit impressed director Hajime Tabata so much that he convinced them it was worth the trouble to figure out how to do it for all the Eidolons. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest has a boss called Jin and a weaker version of itself, Iflighty, as a normal enemy. The names are taken from Final Fantasy Adventure, where Ifrit was mistranslated with an L in its name. Many of the North American staff that worked on Adventure also worked on Mystic Quest, so they retained the same name. When Mystic Quest was translated back into Japanese, Iflighty was renamed Cyclops. The 2 lean into the Middle Eastern origins of their names, with their design being more strongly reminiscent of Western depictions of genies. In World of Final Fantasy, there are 3 kinds of Ifrit reflecting different stages of growth: the adult Ifrit, the adolescent Aphrodite, and the child Frit, which may or may not be a deliberate allusion to the Final Fantasy XI Ifrit, but probably not. There is also a female incarnation of Ifrit, Ifrita, juxtaposed with a male Shiva named Chivalry. There is also a trio of Ifrit palette swaps, Weeglee, Gleed, and Gleefrit, but the game is inconsistent if they are actually variants of Ifrit or just monsters that look like Ifrit. In the anime Final Fantasy Unlimited, Ifrit is summoned by the soil-charged triad Cardinal Red, Dark Crimson, and Burnt Sienna. In the Midgar stage in Super Smash Bros., Ifrit is one of the summons that can be called, though it more resembles its Final Fantasy VIII design than Final Fantasy VII. When summoned, it creates a plume of fire that tilts the arena for a time. In some of these spin-offs, Ifrit can achieve a bit of notoriety for its difficulty as a boss. The Opera Omnia Ifrit was the first summon board released, and Ifrit starts the battle with Hellfire, a group-hitting Brave to HP attack that sets the arena on fire, dealing Brave damage to a character at the start of their turn. At higher difficulties, Ifrit will grant itself Resist Veil when its Brave grows high enough, becoming immune to HP damage until it is inflicted with a Brave break. While Ifrit is not regarded as the hardest summon board fight, because it was the first of them to be added, this made it an intimidating presence at the time. In Final Fantasy Record Keeper, Ifrit was one of the original wave of moat dungeon bosses and was widely regarded as the most powerful of them and very challenging at the time. When a new tier of boss difficulty was added to weekly events in 2020, the first event to receive such a tier was a Final Fantasy XIV event that made Ifrit that boss. And, unfortunately for Record Keeper players, Ifrit's mechanics regarding Hellfire and Infernal Nails were preserved from 14. The Magicite boss Ifrit uses essentially the same gimmick. Ifrit summons flame pillars that counter all attacks with flare and explode when destroyed to damage and debuff the party member that destroyed it. But if Ifrit uses Hellfire when 4 flame pillars are present, Hellfire inflicts instant death. This has caused players to be defeated for dealing too much damage too quickly. Ifrit performs certain actions at certain damage thresholds, so a player could accidentally cause him to summon 4 flame pillars and then immediately use Hellfire. Oops. Thank you to everyone for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more lore Final Fantasy in the future, and stop by the community tab on my channel to vote on the next subject.